Yo, it's Guido coming at you with a Tactics Talk. Welcome back. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate the support of the channel as always. And today we have an episode of Which Should You Research? We're going to look at the German line today. We're going to look at two Titanic heavyweights, the Panzer VII and the E100. The Panzer VII and the E100. And you might ask, well, Guido, why are we looking at the lowly Panzer IIIJ, the Tier 4? Well, that, my friends, is where your journey will begin if you are going to decide to unlock one of these two. Now, full disclosure, what Guido says is unlock them both, but we don't all have unlimited time, and some of us may want to go for one or the other tank. So let's take a look. We're going to make them go head to head, and let's find out which one you should research out of the Kampfpanzer VII or the E100. Let's get started and take a look at it. All right, the two tanks we're talking about, the Kampfpanzer VII or Panzer VII and the E100. There are three super heavies at the end of lines in the German tech tree. The other one is the Maus, but we're going to concentrate on the Panzer VII or E100. Which one should you unlock first? We're going to take these guys head to head, look at some comparisons, look at some gameplay, and come up with a decision on which one you should research first. Full disclosure, Guido says both, but you may not have time to go through both, or you may want to go for the best one first, and we're going to try to find that out today. This is the Klarer Himmel, Clear Sky, I believe, 3D style for the E100, very cool. The Panzer VII, as far as I'm aware, does not have a 3D style yet. Now let's take a quick look at these things. The vehicle details, it's a super heavy with a rear placement turret. That's one of the defining features of this tank and the tanks that come up to it, or a couple of the tanks that come up to it. Developed by the Krupp Company in 1942, project was discontinued in the favor of just making more heavy tanks as opposed to super heavy tanks. There were no vehicles ever manufactured, so kind of a blueprint or plan tank. You can see that this thing has 5 crew members, as do most, if not all, of the heavies we're going to talk about when we get into the tech tree as well. Both lines have the same loadout until you get to Mr. E100. And Mr. E100 is carrying an extra loader. This is a assault heavy tank, as is, I believe, the Panzer VII. Yes, so both considered assault heavy tanks in the game. June 1943, Aldenwerk Company received an order for the E100. However, 1944, heavy tank development was discontinued. By the end of the war, only the chassis was completed, which was later captured by the British Army. So the Maus got a little further. We're going to click over to the E100 while we're talking about it. The Maus actually got a little further, had a turret on one of them. I believe there was 2 examples. One of them was only the chassis. But for the E100, they only built the bottom part, never really got any further than that. A couple things on the E100, big boxy tank right there. Extra loader, as we talked about right there. Another thing to remember with the E100 is you will have to unlock one module on it. There are some Tier 10s that have that, and the E100 has a 15 centimeter very grande gun. Recently buffed the 12.8. That is what I use, and we'll talk about that as we get into the comparisons. Doesn't hit quite as hard, but has more DPM, fires faster, all that good stuff. So we've got a center mounted turret, very boxy tank, side scraping monster, and then we have the Panzer VII, which is a unique kind of looking tank with the turret in the back, which is good for side scraping, but got a weakness. We're going to talk about that, and some very thick frontal armor. So rear turreted versus center turreted. 1 extra loader for this tank, and they're carrying radio operators, which is okay actually on this line. We'll get into that in just a minute when we get to the tech tree for both of these, because there's a radio operator in every tank up to the Tier 10. For the U100, as mentioned, you're going to add a loader when you come in there. So let's take a quick look at the tech tree, and how do you get to one of these, and what do I think about the tanks in the lower tiers as you get to the Tier 10s. Looking at the tech tree, remember we had the Panzer IIIJ, which was the start for both of these lines. You're going to go through from the L tractor up to the Panzer IIIJ, which will then split off into a great many German tanks. You can get to mediums, you can get to the E100 line, you can get to the Maus line, and the Panzer VII. So you're making a decision at the Panzer IIIJ either to go to the 3001H or the Panzer IV-H. Let's talk about the tanks that go to the E100 first. I find them to be overall better tanks. It is an easier journey. 3001H is actually quite a good Tier 5 heavy tank. 3601 another good tier 6 heavy tank. The Tiger gets a bad rap in the game, has had multiple buffs, a little bit of a nerf in the past as far as its rate of fire, is still a decent tank. Tiger 2 is a sleeper, has had a recent buff as well. Very nice tank. The E75 is a legend in the game, very strong tier 9 tank. And then you get to the E100. As I said, the crew is exactly the same until you get to the E100 and you add another loader. Let's just say one thing that's actually kind of cool about having 2 loaders on the E100 is you can kind of split up some of the important skills on those guys, because now intuition actually does something, which is nice. And of course, you're going to want the shell rack thing, whatever it's called, the one that stops you from getting ammo racked. Shell organization or some such, I don't know. If we are going to go to the Panzer VII, you're going to go through the same line that will eventually split off to the Mals. The beauty there, obviously, is you're going to go through 3 tanks, and then you have another option, and you can fairly easily get to the Mals from the same line. You're going to go to the Panzer IV-H, which is a average tier 5 tank. The 3001P, which is actually quite good at tier 6, and I would say it's slightly better than the 3601. Both of these are good at tier 6. But now we're gonna get into a little bit of, we got some pain we got to get through, my friends. It's going to be a little bit painful here. The Tiger P, which does not compare well with the Tiger 1 and has been power crept in a big way. So you're going to have to fight your way through the Tiger P, my friends. And then you get to split off again. And if you're going for the Panzer VII, ouch, you're going to drive the 4502, which is an inferior Tiger 1. The 1000.01, we're not talking the Maus today, but this is a really good tier 8 tank, 100%. The Maushen's okay, and then you're the Maus. But we're talking about the Panzer VII. So we've got 2 painful tanks in a row. I think the 4502 is better than the Tiger P at tier 8, but not by much. And then you get to the 4000 or 4502B, which now we've got a rear turreted tank, much like the Panzer VII. And this is a good transition tank to kind of figure out that rear turreted kind of tank, and frankly that's a pretty good tier 9. A little bit tricky with the rear turret. We will talk about that as we go and we get into especially the gameplay with the Panzer VII, because it's a little bit wonky, a little bit ungainly and fiddly to use in the game, but it has a few advantages that are pretty nice. And the 4502 Bravo does a pretty good job as a rear turreted, very thickly armored in the front tank. All right, and then you're going to get into the Panzer VII with the same crew loadout through the whole thing. So that's how you're going to get to tier 10. I won't yet tell you which one I would go to, but you may be starting to sense the direction that I am going. All right, let's move on. Armor. Armor is what these behemoths are known for. The top tier German tanks are known for having very thick armor, but it's also very square. The box tanks, as they say. And the E100 is definitely no exception, because you can get this thing into a seriously difficult situation to pen. Look at that. Bounce angles, 300 effective, 400 effective, very difficult side scraper. This thing is an absolute monster. If you get face on with the turret and you have a lot of pen, because my goodness, is that not thick. 270, but 298 effective based on the slight angling backwards on there. The upper hole is pretty much impenetrable unless you're getting some look down. It's the lower hole that people are going to go after, and that's actually quite large. But still, it doesn't take a whole lot of angle before you start bouncing more or less everything. And remember, while you're side scraping with a E100 and you're not trying to shoot, you want to keep that turret pointed a little bit forward there to give that side armor that nice ricochet angle and to keep them from going straight into your upper plate here on your hull, because it's very flat right here. Although it is quite thick and the effective is decent, if somebody's dabbing to at tier 10 and they've got north of 300, they're probably going to start punching through. So give them a little angle and make that effective a little bit harder for them to punch through. So this is just, as far as angling and using this tank, it's quite, I'm going to say simple. All right, side scraping isn't always that easy, but it is fairly simple with this tank to keep some really good armor pointed towards the enemy. You just got to love the angling and the thickness of this beast. All right, now let's take a look at the Panzer VII and see what it brings to the game. Well, all right, so far so good. Some really nice upper plate. The lower plate not as good, but quite thick. Actually, 276 is pretty good effective armor. It's 230 total. but it's got some okay angling, not amazing. The upper piece is angled pretty well, but oh boy. Oh no. Oh boy, oh geez. All right, we're gonna look at this when we get to the gameplay, but this tank is quite strong like this. Cover up the lower plate and you're in pretty good shape. It's very difficult to penetrate any of this, especially if you cover up that lower part. But let's say we're trying to use that rear turret, which is highly effective provided you've got the right armor profile and side scraping out, because the turret's in the back and it's the first thing that comes around and you can get that shot. But unfortunately, there is a huge, in terms of the way this game is played, design flaw in this tank. You know, not that the Germans would have designed it necessarily for side scraping or all that stuff in the real world, but for gameplay, the way this game is played, this is a big owie right here. It is the rounded part right below the turret at the back of the tank. When you look at the model, you can see it kind of curve around right there. And when you put any kind of angle on it at all, say I'm trying to come out from behind a corner, you are going to collect so many holes right there. If anyone has any idea what they're doing, you are going to collect ding, 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 ding. They are just going to absolutely shred that spot on the turret. And it's just, you can't move that. The turret you can move, but that part is fixed. It's just a piece of the casting around the back of the hole there, and there's nothing you can do other than try to keep this thing straight on. And like I said, if you can do this in a hold down spot, looking straight at somebody, you're in good shape. Any kind of angle right here, and ouch, it is just going to hurt. All right, so a critical flaw in this tank that is extremely difficult to cover up unless you can, no kidding, just cover up the lower plate and point right at them. Not easy, right? Not easy. Right. What do the numbers look like? What do the numbers look like? What we have here is 4 tanks, although there's only 3 separate tanks. We have an E-100 with the small gun. We have the Panzer VII, which is the tech tree. We have an E-100 with the 750 Alpha big gun, the 15 centimeter. And I've thrown on here what is a Clan Rewards reward tank. Essentially, it's a Panzer VII variant with the 750 Alpha big gun on it, so the 7201K, just to kind of look at these and compare and contrast. Let's concentrate, though, on the 2 contenders, the E-100 and the Panzer VII. E-100 configured as I would do it with the small gun, and we'll note the 750 gun as well on the E-100 over there. This is the straight-up tank, no buffs, no debuffs, no crew other than 100% crew. Realize that gives a little bit of advantage because once the commander's 100%, he helps out the crew a little bit. All right, that being said, the E-100 with the smaller gun is rolling a 530 Alpha. The Panzer VII is rolling a 560 with a little bit more. So far, so good for the Panzer VII. But wait, average pen 246, 258 for the Panzer VII. Okay, not bad. Rate of fire, as you might wait a minute, what? Well, okay, hold on. What happened to the Panzer VII? Keep rolling. Keep it rolling. Gun loading, 11 seconds, .51 for the smaller E-100 gun, and the Panzer VII at 1530. Okay. Gun traverse, similar. It's slow. These are big turrets. All right. Remember, these are late World War II development, so not as agile as the newer tanks. -7 is okay depression. We're doing okay. 20 elevation, a little nod to the E-100 as far as an advantage there. Aim time at 2.4 and 2.49, not bad. Dispersion, 0.37 or 0.35, a little better to the Panzer VII, okay. And let's then get down into the DPM, and what on earth has happened to the Panzer VII? Well, folks, that reload time kicked it right square in the nether regions. That hurts. 2,764 with the 12 centimeter, 12.8 I believe it is. If you put the big 750 Alpha gun on the E-100, you're sitting at 2,347, still more. And you look at the Panzer or the VK7201, and it's even at 2,347 with the 750 Alpha gun. And oh, by the way, a 19-second reload on both of those with those big 750. What on earth? The Panzer VII is absolutely, in terms of firepower, crippled by the reload time, and only getting a 560 Alpha out of that reload time equals a tier 8 kind of average DPM. A tier 8 kind of average DPM. It's hard to recover from that, folks. It really is. But we're going to press there may be something that you might really like about the Panzer VII. Maybe we're going to find that diamond in the rough. What do you guys think? Got to start commenting. Start commenting. Well, here's some of the strengths of the Panzer VII. It does get a nod in the whole armor department. We did look at that on Tanks.GG, quite thick. The turret is, not so good. But remember, it's very curved, and it's a lot of mantlet right there in the front. So as you remember, the armor profile is actually pretty good on that. Nice thick side on the turret as well at 160. So you really need to have a decent pen just to roll up to it and shoot it in the side of the turret. 270 on the face of the turret on the U100. Remember, we looked at that. That's quite powerful. 200 on the hull, but nicely angled as well. Slight nod maybe to the thickness of the hull on the 70 or on the Panzer VII. But remember we looked at Tanks.GG on the profile. One of these is a side-scraping master with good armor nearly all around. The other one has a critical weakness. Mobility. Let's see. Does the Panzer VII come forward and start to dominate? It is 3 kilometers an hour faster. That's it, folks. That's hard to tell in the game. It's more or less the same. If you're going 1,000 miles, then that would become a factor. But based on the way the game is played and the size of the maps, pretty much the same mobility. Traverse, slight nod to the Panzer VII, and then it is more stealthy than the... It's funny when you say it. It is not stealthy at all, but in relation to the U100, it is the stealth master, and they're both rolling the same view range, so no advantage there for the view range. Nice 400 on all of the tanks. So what do we have here? Well, it's very interesting. The U100 is probably superior numbers-wise in both its small gun configuration and its large gun configuration, and it is almost entirely due to this insane 15.34 reload for a 560 Alpha gun. This has been power crept in a big way, my friends. It certainly needs a buff. The DPM is atrocious at 2,190, and the rest of the tank is going to struggle numbers-wise to make up for it. However, let's take a look at some gameplay after we take a look at how I have my stuff set up and crews and whatnot, and see if maybe the Panzer VII has something sneaky up its sleeve. Let's take a look. Okay, as I always do, we're going to take a look at my stats in the tanks. Interesting situation here. The U100 was one of my first tier 10s, probably 8-9 years ago. Played a lot of it when I was not very good. I am at 50%. As a matter of fact, I had to do some work to get to 50% with only 780 average XP and only 2,441 average damage. But look at the hits. The hits are up there. I like the accuracy of the small gun, even the big gun, because you wanted to be careful with that gun. That 750 Alpha, you don't have time to miss. You need to hit with that thing. So it's been pretty good as far as that goes. Battle survived at 43%. That's not bad at all. 2.24 destruction. Armor use 0.84. That's a quite armored tank. Anytime you're approaching one, that means the armor would be working for you. Very nice, very nice. I managed a 6,200 damage game with 7 kills. I haven't played this thing in ages, and I played it quite a bit. Well, maybe 10 games for this video to reacquaint myself with the U100, and I quite enjoyed it. I did enjoy playing the U100, especially with its newer buffs. So it's I'm not going to tell you that it's going to overtake the meta, but it is relevant enough to be enjoyable. Now let's take a look at the Panzer VII, which I've played 43 games in and managed an astounding 37% win rate. I'm going to tell you, it's tough. Battle survived only 27%. My hit rate's at 75, which is okay. My damage ratio is below 1. That's terrible. Terrible for a tier 10. Destruction ratio 1.39 is okay. The armor use is lower than the U100. This is going to tell a tale, the armor use. 2,124, not great. Average damage caused right there. That's kind of indicative of a 0.99 damage ratio right there. Struggle bus, only 707 average XP per battle. I would expect when I get this to 100 battles, and I will do that, as I try to take every tank from tier 5 and above to 100 battles. For some of this to come up, I will probably be able to get it, I believe, to 50% or so. This is a tough one to play in the current meta, my friends. I know maybe I'm foreshadowing this a little more, but let's take a look at my setup for both of these. We will start with the mighty Panzer VII. You can see the crew in here is a decent crew, not amazing. Brothers in Arms is rocking for it. I am running vents. I have a vert stab and gun rammer. There are other options these days. There is an argument in there for other equipment potentially. Hardening is certainly on the table for this tank. Spall liner potentially if you're worried about arty. I don't know, maybe even a turbo to give it a little bit more of a boost to move around. But as far as just an all-round damage dealing kind of setup, this is it. I didn't use any purple equipment. I didn't use any bounty equipment. I was running 10 APCR. Just a quick look at the pen. It's 315 when you dab 2, so that's north of 300. That's pretty useful. 258 is okay for standard pen on a heavy tank, and I have large kits, no food. Obviously food, directives, purple equipment would definitely help this thing. And it's coming to the point in this game that at tier 10 you need to start running some of that if you're serious about getting good stats. Quick look, I don't think I have done any. No, I have not, so that would also help out. If you're going to do some of the field modifications on the Panzer VII, would help it out as well. Take a look at the E100. Similar crew, maybe slightly worse. They do have brothers in arms. I am running the hardening on this tank, a vert stab, and I've got a rammer on it as well. Same discussion, you could put vents in that slot right there. And as far as field modifications, I have not done that yet. Once you get to this point though, and you're able to unlock the second spot, then you can probably put a firepower slot in there and help out with some of the firepower stuff here, give yourself a little more bonus. Same discussion on purple and bounty stuff, running food, all of that good stuff is something that's going to help that tank out at tier 10. And I am running 14 APCR with north of 300 at 311 for the number 2 penetration. So that is my setup for both of those tanks. Let's take a look at some gameplay and then we will come up with a verdict on which one of these you should research first. All right, I got a couple bits of gameplay for the Kampfpanzer VII. You can see it's here. We're on Fischerdorf Fords. We're on Fjords. I know it's Fjords. I got it. All right, just take it easy. It's a little joke. It's a little joke, I say. This is a cautionary tale that I want you guys to pay attention to with the Kampfpanzer VII because it has kind of a huge weakness that really hurts it when it's taking on well, accurate tanks or hold down tanks, really any tanks to be quite honest. So we're going to come out here and we're going to eat a shot into our lower plate. So the front armor, as we noted, is really strong. The lower plate's not that strong. And boom, with an accurate gun in a nice hold down position, the Super Conqueror and some gold just punches right through, even though I have a little bit of angle on it as well, punches right through the lower plate. So you're going to have a tough time with that. So you might say, okay, fine, Guido, you know, the front armor's good, but lower plates are weak on every tank, so why don't we try to do some side scraping? Well, that's a good idea. Let's try to do some side scraping. And as we noted on the armor profile, we're going to see exactly how that works for us. Okay, hold on, wait a minute. Oh, is there another one? Yep, okay, hold on. We've been hit by the Super Conqueror and the object. So the object punches through for 663 and the Super Conqueror for 405, 409. Well, where did we get hit, you ask? See that turret bulge right there? That when you side scrape out, gets flat plated and isn't that thick to begin with? So you might think, wow, this looks like a pretty good side scraper. No, not really. That turret bulge right there, man, does it make it tough to make a side scraper out of this thing. And normally rear turreted tanks, as we've talked about, can be pretty decent side scrapers, but because of that one weakness on the side, and oh, by the way, the tier 10 premium version of this thing doesn't have that weakness. It's a tough day. So you're really kind of relegated to, and there's another one, that's the third one into the same exact spot. It's a really tough day trying to side scrape. It's hard trying to use the front armor, so if you can get hold down and just show the turret, that's probably just about your best option right there. Just about your best option. All right, now let's look at some gameplay where I don't quite get shredded to death in one spot there. Okay, second example that I want to show you here is this tank is just a little difficult to use because of the rear turret as it sits so far back. Relatively slow, a little bit ungainly, doesn't turn very fast, slow turret. It can be a bit of a trick to use. It seems like it's got a lot of armor, it really does, but actually applying that armor and the tank to the game can be a bit of a trick. We're on Lakeville, spawned into the north, I've come into the city. If there is an element for the Panzer VII, for the Panzerkampfwagen 7, it is a city of some kind, factories, more level kind of fight, places where you can hide You can get behind buildings, pop out, take your shots with that big cannon, and then move forward using the cover of buildings and things like that. But what we're going to learn with that is it's because of its relative slowness and its kind of clunky and clumsy maneuvering, it isn't easy. All right, well, I get tracked there. I think that guy just blind fired in there. I don't remember if I got spotted. That tree being down right in front of me was actually a great help. That might be something you might want to think about dropping right there when you're coming around that corner. So whether that was on purpose or by accident, I do appreciate the person that did that. All right, so the Pz. 66 and the 430U have moved forward. If we look at this battle, the T-57, one of their other Tier 10s, is in the valley, which is very good. And they have a considerable number of tanks which appear to be camping, and for the moment, their 121B isn't even in the fight. So it's just the 705 Alpha and the VZ, what is it? TVZ-51, the Tier 9 version of the new, and I did not mean to knock him out like that, the Tier 9 version of the new Czech tanks. So I'm going to push, and that's one of the things that's nice about this tank. It's got pretty good hit points. It's pretty good at pushing in and starting to thump people. It's just that the armor profile can be difficult to use. Now I'm going to try to get some angles with the front armor there. Maybe do a little side scrape if this guy doesn't really know where to shoot, and apparently he doesn't. We're going to try to hit this guy and hammer the Carnarvon. Now it's rolling about a 560 as we discussed, trying to remember now, 560 average damage for the Alpha. So while that hits hard, it's not so hard that Tier 8s are going to completely fear your gun, right? I mean, you're going to shred some hit points off of them, but you're going to have a hard time making people fear you too much. So we'll back off of this. We'll get down into this guy's lower plate here if we can, and we take him down. For a whole 83 is all the hit points he had. Now here's an example right here of just the relative clumsiness of the tank. And German tanks tend to have this problem overall, but this one especially. I'm getting pushed from behind. Now I've got to spin this big beast around, this rear turreted monster, and get around here and see if I can avoid, and I just do avoid that guy hitting me, and now I'm just hoping the arty or the armor will hold up, and it actually does. Look at that. I get a bounce, it looks like, potentially. Nope, the E50 actually hit me. The only reason it felt like I got a bounce is I have a good amount of hit points. So I would imagine we have a couple holes in our lower plate right there. We're trying to side scrape. Let's just take a quick look at that and see if we get, yep, we got a hole or two in the lower plate. There you go. So that's where people are aiming. Looks like a ding off the front plate or two that did not penetrate. So that front plate is quite strong. Lower plate, it's hard to hide, right? I'm trying to brawl. I'm trying to get in here. We had a push going on. I really want to start punishing these guys. And I have to get out into the open and expose myself a little bit to do so. The AC-48 pushes in. I've got to wait for my repair because I do not have a kit to use. And now we're kind of getting sandwiched, so I know I need to come in here and get rid of this 705A, so we'll kind of push on him. And unfortunate, right? A 490 roll on the 705, which he just died. I don't know how many hit points he left, but I have a 560 Alpha gun, and I just low roll right there. That's something you'll see with this tank a bit. I'm not saying there's something wrong with the tank, but when you have things like a 560 Alpha, a lot of times you end up seeing sub 500 rolls just because of the way RNG works, plus or minus 25 cents, 25%. Plus or minus 25 cents. That would be pretty good. So now I'm trying to turn around and get after the E50. You see just how clumsy this thing is? I didn't want to chase him in the same direction because if he kept going, he might have outrun the 430, but the 430 tracks him down. He just can't really get away. We'll come down around this corner, and I don't quite get there in time. So that's why I wanted to show you this. Even in its element, it can be quite a clumsy tank to play. A little bit difficult with the rear turret, and it's really not that fast. And I think for the amount of armor it has, and we'll get to this when I get to my wrap-up, but really, you can see it here. For the amount of armor it has and its slowness, the gun just kind of doesn't, it brings no fear factor at 560. Yeah, it's a pretty good, hard-hitting gun, but it's so slow and the armor profile is so weak in the way the game is played right now that the gun really just doesn't make up for it. So, you know, 2837 is barely over its hit points and damage, and that felt like a good game to me when I played this thing. It really did. All right, let's move on to the 100. All right, on to the E100. So you can see I've got the 3D style on the E100. She's looking pretty cool, actually. You got to like that. Just a really cool looking style. We're in Fisherman's Bay, loaded into the south spawn. I'm moving into town. Both of these tanks are going to be very comfortable in cities or places like the factories or places that have a lot of cover. So we're going to miss this shot here on this guy as he crosses. I think I actually hit the wall. I am using the small gun. It is fun in the E100 to roll around with the 750 Alpha, but they have recently buffed, and by recently I mean the last year or two, the smaller gun on the E100, and that's where you're going to get some really nice DPM out of this thing. Reloads relatively quickly. Doesn't hit as hard as the Kampfpanzer 7. It's at 530, so you're losing 30 hit points. Of course, it's not the 750 that the big gun has, but it's more comfortable. It fires faster. I think it keeps you in the game a little better than the gun on the Kampfpanzer 7 or the 750, to be quite honest. The 750 and the big, what is it, 152 millimeter or 150 millimeter. That's the big gun on the E100. So a low, he loses his mind. He just drives out into the open. Put a little angle on this guy, aim in, give him a nice thump. It's not quite enough to take him down at 537. He has 28. I'll just drive forward. No sense letting him have an easy shot. There you go. Now that is an example of how you angle with the E100. You want to move your turret with your hole, so you put the angle on right there. You want to avoid as much as possible giving them the flat turret face or a straight-on shot to your lower plate, which is gigantic and larger than the Kampfpanzer 7. He's fired. I know I'm going to out-reload him. That's the beauty of the smaller gun. When you get into little duels like that, you're going to be back in the fight a little bit faster. I just find this to be a much better gun. The E100 is the quintessential tank of World of Tanks. When you think about the big stomping monster tank rolling through the city or the countryside, crushing everything in sight, it's tier 10, so you're either going to be top tier or same tier. There's no bigger, badder beast on the battlefield really than an E100. You know, you might call it a tie with things like the 60 TP or maybe the Maus or something like that, or the Type 5, but really this thing is just the big monster you think about when you're like, all right, I want to go drive a tank and stomp around the city and crush my enemies. This really, quite honestly, is the tank you would probably think about, especially if you're a fan of the German tank. So at tier 10 is the ultimate expression of the heavy line. Now the Maus is historic and very cool. The Maus has the advantage of being something that was actually kind of built, but this one is just, to me, the top of the pecking order of heavies for German tanks. You gotta love this thing. So we're just kind of piling through the city. The enemy team is not really fantastic in this match. They do a lot of things like that. The low drove out in front of me. This guy drove out in front of me. I'm getting some good bounces. There's another angling situation. Now let's just talk about that real quick. One thing you want to avoid is giving them too much of your front sprocket. If I can get this silly thing to zoom out. Wargaming, fix your camera. It's driving me crazy. Oh, now I'm in commander mode thing. All right. That front sprocket right there, you don't want to give him too much side shot into that. So I'm poking out right now to take a shot because he already took his, but if you can kind of keep most of that covered up, you're in great shape. So I'll just back out again, and there's no sense letting him have a shot. Know how I mentioned earlier, this enemy team just did bizarro things. I don't know what the UDES is doing. It's so I'll shoot and track him. We'll pin him down. This is something that you can't do with the 750 Alpha gun. Is kind of permatrack, guys. This guy does not have a good crew. Otherwise, he'd have been long gone, or he didn't have a kit in there either. So, I mean, we're not really far into the game. We're getting to the mid game or so, but I've already dropped 3,766 on people. So I just love this thing. It's a fun tank to play, and it is not as clumsy as the Panzer 7. That's really, for me, the big difference between these two. Center-mounted turret. It actually feels faster, even though they're roughly similar. It really does just feel more mobile than the Panzer 7. I can't explain it, but it really does have a better feel. But it also still feels like a big stompy tank, which, just as a sidebar, I think is a really cool thing that World of Tanks has managed to do with this game. Is the tanks, even though it's a pixel tank game and it's a computer game, they sort of feel heavy when they drive. It's I don't know. It's the sluggishness and maybe the slight delay in response and all the things that they put into it, but it feels like you know, if you're driving a light tank, you feel like it's a more light and sprightly tank. You drive this thing, you feel like you're the big monster. Again, you know, guys just, I don't know what this guy's doing. He just drives out in front. I took a bad, hasty shot. Kind of was surprised to see the guy. And all of a sudden I find the other E100. Now what I just did to him is I put it into that front sprocket. He was over angled, so I actually put it into that front sprocket of his right there, penned past that and into the hitbox behind it, and that's really what you're looking to do. Now we're gonna find out he's, I believe, running the big gun. I could be mistaken. The Super Conqueror is up on my left side. I got to be careful with him because that big flat side of my turret, that big flat side turret and the flat side of the tank, the Super Conqueror won't have too much trouble pinning that. Another hasty shot. I really kind of felt like I'd get swarmed by the 263, the E100, and maybe piled on by the Super Conqueror if he could get a shot based on the way I was maneuvering, but none of that really materialized here. A little sip of French roast right there. It's delicious. Just missed that shot. Just missed that shot. Like I said, very comfortable in the amount of time it takes to reload. I'm thinking, please just move forward. Just move forward. Also really wishing my guys would get rid of this guy. The 50 TP makes a move, so I decide to kind of follow up his move by pushing in here and seeing if I can't get some of these guys. Unfortunately, this 50 TP dies, and now I'm sort of exposed. That surprised me a little bit. So we hit him, and he gets a big thump on me for 730 with his heat. Now that's the big payoff of the big E100 when he's running the 750 Alpha gun. If the Conqueror had not been up there, the Super Conqueror, and I get a bounce right there just by putting my turret towards him and angling a little bit, if the Super Conqueror wasn't there, I could have probably moved in for another shot on the E100. And this guy loses his mind again. Gives me a little bit of front armor there with his little spin to try to back out. So we just sneak one in there into his armor and he's gone. A little help from my friend up there, the G-Sor. Does a nice job sniping that guy. And now I need to just get rid of this Super Conqueror if I can, or potentially just go down the road right there. So I'm really wondering, where is this guy? Is he actually here? Take a little snap there, but looks like it actually hit the side of the building. Then the prototype may be coming through. I'm like, well, is he going to poke through? And again, I'm just surprised the E100 didn't push on me. Wasn't a very good player. Didn't really have a good idea what he was doing there, and didn't play too much. Maybe he was just staring at the T10 or whatever he was trying to do there. Super Conqueror starts to get kind of pushed by the object, so I'm looking both ways. This is something a lot of players don't like to do, is fight in multiple directions. I'm just going to cross right here and see what I can do. And I don't see the E100, so the E100 has gone to ground. Prototype's sitting there. We'll come around this corner. One thing about coming around the corner with this thing, you want to try to square it up about right there, but he did a nice job and ended up pinning me. But we'll take him out right there, shoot him into the side of the turret. And there's the other E100. Looks like he's looking at me, so I don't really want to just give him an automatic shot. There he goes. So now he's kind of pushing in this way, staring. Super Conqueror's still alive, and I think, well, maybe we can just back up here and maybe get a shot on this guy. There he is. Put one on him. Now he's down to a one shot. Maybe we can entice the Object 140, the G-Sword, to go finish that guy off. We're up to 6,100 damage. Like, all right, just back out. There we go. 750 Alpha gun has a hard time doing that. Shot after shot. Shot after shot with the smaller gun. Now, this is one of the tanks, as we mentioned, that has one of the modules you have to unlock, right? You don't get the 750 Alpha unless you unlock it. Come out here and look for him. That was a hasty shot. I really should have put it into that front sprocket. I hit it right into the side of the tank. He's fairly well armored, and he goes down in a heap to the G-Sor. More than likely, that guy was hitting his turret or the side of his tank, potentially. Probably the turret based on the angle as he was staring at me. And then we're going to look for a shot. And I don't know. I don't think I get another shot here. We're going to just come in here real quick. Oh, that's right. We come around the corner on this dude. We don't quite get there. He gets hit. Another hasty shot into that armor, and I try to come in there and drown him, but he dies. Get a little bit of ramming damage. Another nice thing about the E100, that's a lot of weight. It will do some serious ramming damage if you can hit people. All right, guys, let's wrap it up and see which one is the best. Which one should you go for, the E100 or the Panzer 7? Well, after after all the words I've said so far, the evidence that we have looked at, the replays that I just did, the cautionary tale about the side scraping with the Panzer 7 and my struggles, I don't know. Can you guys make one guess as to which one I would pick? Well, I have the Maus right there, so I'm going to go slightly off script for just a moment. I would frankly get the Maus 10,000 years before I ever got the Panzer 7. The winner is the heavyweight champion of the German heavy tank line. The best of them, as far as I'm concerned, is the U-100. Then the Maus, then this guy, which Wargaming, my friends, needs a serious buff to have any kind of relevance in this game. But the U-100, my friends, going up the line, and I think this is probably one of the biggest things about it. When you're going up a line, you're really looking at also the tanks you're going to play, because if some of us will just go through a line because we want to get to tier 10, but some of us like to enjoy the game. That's me. And when I look at the U-100 line, I say to myself, those are all good. I like every one of these tanks. The 3001H, the 3601, the Tiger, the Tiger II, E75. There's nothing really that painful. In fact, most of them are quite a joy to play in World of Tanks. If you go to the Panzer 7, the reward is bad, and some of the tanks along the way are bad, if not most, once you get to tier 7. The 9, I enjoy the 4502B, but I wouldn't want to really touch most of them other than the 3001 and sometimes the Panzer 4H. The Maus is good to get to, and the 100.01 is fine, again going off script, but the winner on which you should research first. I think this was easy, wasn't it, folks? Wasn't this actually... Most of you are like, I just watched this whole video and I already knew the answer. But you got to look at it, man. You have to have an open mind. So let's look at the numbers. Let's play the tanks a little bit. Let's consider the various ways the game is played and which one of these things is actually the best tank. And frankly, if you only have one line that you can go up, or if you're trying to decide, which one's best, 100,000 million %, the U-100 wins. Absolutely. Of course, Guido says, play the whole game, unlock them all, enjoy yourself. That's all I've got for today. Thanks for tuning in. Let me know what you guys think down below. Which one is your favorite? I'll even let you throw in the 7501K into the discussion, because I didn't go over it too much on the comparison, but that 750 gun, this is a Clan Wars tank, but that 750 gun does give that thing a little pizzazz that the tech tree version, the Panzer 7, does not have. But that being said, here's your winner, folks. Easy peasy. The U-100, very cool, clear sky. What was it? Himmelsklärung or Klärung Himmels, 3D style. Congratulations, U-100. That's all I've got. We'll see you guys later.